In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 different types of passive hydroponic gardens. First, what is passive hydroponics? It really is like it sounds. You would just set up your hydroponic garden and then leave it until it's time to harvest. And we're probably familiar with the most popular of all the passive hydroponic gardens, the Kratky method. So I'm going to start there with the Kratky method. The principles behind this method, or non-circulating passive hydroponics, are to fill a reservoir with your nutrients in your water, have the plant's roots suspended in that nutrient water, and then as the water and the nutrients are evaporated and absorbed, air becomes more available on the top of the container for the roots as they get larger and demand more air. That way we're meeting all of our plants' needs with water, nutrients, and air. That's why the Kratky method is so popular. It's very clever, and if you engineer it properly, the Kratky method is really satisfying. That actually reminds me, I have a bunch of guides on the Kratky method that are totally free. You can download them over at humblegrowthhydroponics.com right here, and those are going to be an awesome resource to get you guys started. So the next method I want to move on to is called Hydroponic Wick method. The principles behind the Hydroponic Wick method are to have your plant in the top of a container with a wick going from the substrate, keeping the substrate nice and wet, all the way down to the nutrient water. As the water is absorbed, the nutrients concentrate at the bottom and giving your plant what it needs as it grows. This is completely passive. Once you set up your wick garden, you can just leave it and allow the wick to do its job. But like I said, if you notice anything going wrong, then it's a good idea to check your pH and make adjustments regularly if you need to. I personally like the wick method because this can actually resolve some of the problems that you might run into with a Kratky garden. If you didn't happen to choose the right size container, a lot of times the first time or even the second time you grow a plant, you're learning more about what it needs, and there are some mistakes that are made with the Kratky method. But with the wick method, it's almost a bit of a fail-safe to have your water delivered constantly to the substrate to keep it nice and wet. So yes, the Kratky method is great for beginners, but actually I would say the wick method is the easiest, kind of quintessential hydroponic beginner's garden. And now the last type of passive hydroponic garden might surprise you, but you can actually do a passive deep water culture, passive DWC garden. The principles behind this would be to set up a normal deep water culture with your nutrient reservoir that you would typically constantly keep topping off, but in this we're going to not top it off at all. So we're going to fill up a nutrient reservoir with our water, and we're going to put an air stone in the bottom just like we would in a deep water culture, and that's going to keep the air moving and also keep the nutrients circulating. And then we're actually going to float a disc on top of the water that contains the plant. And the principles here are, as the water is absorbed and evaporate, then the plant's going to actually go down with the water level until it reaches the bottom, and it'll be ready to harvest. The more time you allow things to sit and happen in your hydroponic garden, the higher the probability for something to go wrong. So typically with your passive hydroponic gardens, you can grow cucumbers, you can grow your flowering plants, it's certainly possible, but you'll probably have a better experience stepping into non-flowering plants. However, with the passive deep water culture, I think you can certainly do a flowering plant in this garden. Because the air stone keeps the nutrients constantly mixing around in there, you're not going to run into nutrient concentration issues, and the air stone also adds plenty of available oxygen, so you're not going to run into issues with your roots drying out because they're going to be submerged in water the entire time. They're going to have plenty of oxygen because of the air stone. The nutrients are going to be well mixed, so it's going to be easier to regulate your pH the entire time. The only thing you might want to consider when doing a flowering plant in a passive deep water culture is I would consider doing a top off for the flowering stage. So you can fill one 5-gallon bucket, we'll say, and allow it to go all the way down for vegetative stage, and then fill that bucket back up with the nutrients that it's going to need for the flowering stage, and then allow it to go all the way down for flowering. You'll likely actually have to refill it a few times during the flowering stage, because no matter which garden you're using, if you're growing big plants that flower and fruit, then they become extremely thirsty towards the end. This is a big reason why I wouldn't recommend growing fruiting plants in a Kratky garden unless you're prepared to do a lot of top-offs. Then it's hardly passive anymore. So anyway, I hope this video helped you out to steer you in the right direction when picking out your passive garden. Don't forget to check out humblegrowthhydroponics.com for all those free guides to get you started on passive hydroponics. Look forward to your comments down below, and let's grow together.